This podcast is brought to you by iPlayHockey.ca. iPlay is the leading hockey insurance provider to coaches, camp instructors, spring and summer hockey leagues, and tournaments across Canada. If you need insurance for hockey, iPlay has you covered. iPlay also provides hockey players and coaches with a wide range of free tools, drills, and skills in their drill vault to enhance on-ice performance, and they provide crucial off-ice knowledge as well. So if you need insurance for a hockey team, league, or camp, or if you just want to teach your kids some new drills, head on over to iPlayHockey.ca and check out their new website.
How we doing, everybody? Welcome to episode 254 of the Boys in the Booth podcast. Cody and Melbourne with you. Abrams is a little under the weather. We wish him all the best, but we are very excited to welcome a very special guest to the show. He is the Ottawa Senators beat writer for The Athletic and the host of the Chris Johnston Show for SDPN, Julian McKenzie. Julian, how are you, man? Thanks so much for doing this.
Doing well, guys. Thank you guys so much for having me on the podcast. This is great.
Of course, and we're really excited to have you on. Just wanted to say, we're very familiar with your work. We listened to the CJ show. He's potentially one of the best insiders out there, and the way you facilitate. Well, listen, we got to play both sides here. We got to
both sides.
We got to play both sides.
You guys rep Friedman? What is this? What both sides is this?
I mean, listen, I ran into him at Starbucks last week, so maybe
you're allowed to like Elliot Friedman and Chris Johnston and Pierre LeBrun and Darren Dreger and Frank Saravalli. I don't think they're. I mean, look, whatever insider serves you the best. But I think CJ, and maybe I'm biased, he's definitely one of the best in the game.
Yeah, and so we're really happy to have you, and maybe one day CJ as well. But here's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna get into sort of your career. We know we covered the Sens. We're gonna get into that. So Harper, why don't you tee us up here?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into core four stories. So, Julian, basically the way this works is we just kind of go over four kind of headline, newsy hockey items. We'll just get you to comment on that quickly. And then after that is done, we will go into the main meat and potatoes of the episode. So, again, just, talking about your career a little bit, working with Chris, talking about the Sens and, what advice you would give for people looking to get into the industry. And then we're going to cover your book release coming out in 2026, which is very exciting and looking forward to talking about that as well. So let's get rocking here, Chad.
Core four.
Core four.
Core four.
Core four.
Core four. Core four.
Core four. Core four.
Core four.
All right, here we go. Kicking off Core 4 stories with Julian McKenzie. And first of all, Julian, before I even pose a Core 4 story to you, what do you think of that intro? What are your thoughts on that? The production quality here at Boys and Blues Podcast.
This feels as close to a radio show as I've ever been on a podcast. Just the intros, the inserts, I feel like not to say podcasts don't do it, but I feel like I'm so much more used to traditional radio shows, sports radio shows doing that. So I appreciate the attention to detail and the and the music choices. Those are pretty cool.
Yeah, well, that's Harper coming from
also whose idea? I'm willing to guess it was Chad's idea to name the segment Core 4 just because he's wearing a Leafs hat.
Not at all.
Yeah, and we needed to preserve.
It's not the Sabres fan Harper over here.
Yeah. That's right. We needed to preserve the Core 4 for as long as possible now that it's broken up. So,
do you miss the Core 4?
Honestly, Julian, not really. It was so long that those four guys were together and they didn't get anything done. So something had to change. Mitch is an incredible player, but I think it was time.
That's fair. It's just seeing Leafs fans be so disenchanted with this team that doesn't have Marner. They got in these players that were maybe supposed to make them be a little bit more tougher and maybe play the right way that's supposed to be suited for the playoffs. But even though everyone in the East is playing at a 500 pace, everyone that I know that likes the Leafs just is not a fan of this group. And I wonder how much of that is rooted in them actually missing Mitch Marner. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot of people don't because the exit was still pretty bad, but I'm just curious.
Yeah. I think the big thing with the Leafs and not to derail this Core 4 story segment here, but I think the big thing with the Leafs and fans who watch the team, they just see, I don't know if it's fair to say a lack of effort at times, but sometimes it feels like that. Players are, sort of aloof out there. And then you look at the last, 4 games, 3 of which the Leafs won, and you look at a guy like Austin Matthews who sort of turned it on and, is actually sniping a few goals, and it looks like, okay, like they're going to go how he goes. If he's back, they're back. But a loss to the Bruins last night, and it just feels like you're back to square one. So I don't know what's going on with the Leafs. It's going to be tougher to make the playoffs this year, let alone do anything, of significance in the playoffs. But I think there's just some concerns, and this is the first time in the last decade, it feels like, where there's some actual concern that they might not make the playoffs. So it's just uncharted waters for some Maple Leafs fans here. Okay, back to Core 4 stories. The first one I wanted to ask you about, Julian, is something that got a bit of a rise out of you in the last CJ show, and it's the Ovi Binnington debacle, where Jordan Binnington took Ovechkin's 900th goal puck, hit it in his pants. Some are saying there were 2 pucks in his pants and he potentially switched them, and you didn't like that. So tell me your thoughts on that whole debacle over 900 goals.
I just thought it was annoying. We all know how historic that puck was going to be after the goal was scored. I mean, I think it was said that he was going to give the puck to a linesman. I don't know if I trust him over that. I don't know if I believe him over that personally. If that linesman didn't step up to him after the fact, would he have just kept it? I don't know. But anyway, I mean, it's not that serious, I guess. CJ and I are allowed to disagree. I know CJ loved that moment. I just think Jordan Binnington has just done enough with some of the shenanigans on the ice, and maybe off the ice too, when you account for the water bottle being thrown at Nazem Kadri in a playoff game. He's just done enough to me where I think I'm allowed to not necessarily give him the benefit of the doubt with that puck, but also it's not a big deal. Like, Ovechkin's going to get it anyway. We all know how big of a moment it was. I wasn't as enthralled with it as other people were in the hockey universe. That's just me.
It rubbed me the wrong way a little bit because it felt like Binnington was trying to be maybe a bigger part of history than he was, by stealing that puck. I mean, listen, in 20 years, if he has that puck on his mantle and, it's kind of a cool thing for him to look back on. But in the moment, it just feels like, no one's got to 900 before. Just give it to Ovi.
Like, what are we doing here, man? Like, I don't think Jordan Binnington needed to insert himself into that moment. We should be talking more about Alexander Ovechkin doing something no one has ever done before. And I feel we've spent more time talking about Jordan Binnington doing this. Like, I don't think we should be giving that guy that much attention. He's a great goaltender, but we don't need to be giving him that much attention for a moment like that. But here we are.
Well, Julian, I'll ask you, when you think of Ovechkin and these milestones, do you think of 895 or 900?
I mean, 895 is the record breaker, right? That's the goal that we all are going to remember, a great moment from last season. At this point, every goal Alexander Ovechkin scores is going to be a milestone. It just so happens that 900 is a really nice round number that, again, no one has ever done before. So I think 895, to your point, fair. More people are going to remember that than 900. But I mean, depending on how many goals Alex scores this year, that remembrance of 900 might be more iconic, so to speak. Like, what if Alexander Ovechkin, God forbid, just only scores like 10 more goals for the rest of the year, right? I don't think that's going to happen. But like, 900 looks a little bit more memorable compared to like if Alexander Ovechkin goes on another tear, ends the season with like 40 or something like that at his age, which would be insane. And then we're looking at, I'm not good at math, like you like 935, 940, right? Like, yes, 895 is always going to be the more memorable goal, obviously.
Yeah, hard to argue with that. Our next item here for Core 4, we'll talk about the team that just defeated the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Boston Bruins. They're on a roll right now, 6 straight wins, a team definitely in transition. They've moved on from the Bergeron, Marchand, Chara era, and They're looking really good right now. Again, 6 wins in a row under Marco Sturm. Your thoughts on the Bruins, Julian?
I'm pleasantly surprised at how well they've been playing, and I will say something that I said during the offseason about this Bruins team. You could be worse off with a starting three of David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy, and Jeremy Swayman as your core players. Like, I don't think too many people projected the Bruins to be a playoff team, and I think their performance from last year says a lot to that. But I still felt that if they, and it was going to take some time, if they just built the right pieces around those three players I mentioned earlier, they could still give themselves a fighting chance. That being said, like, I don't know how many people projected Morgan Geekie to be fighting for the goal scoring lead at this point in the year. What a season for him, putting up points, putting up goals, playing on that top line with Pastrnak and providing offense. Like, the Bruins have something here. We'll see how long it lasts for them. But I think for a group that not a lot of people pegged as a playoff team, you look at Marco Sturm in his first year coaching this team, that's a building block. That's something that they can look at as a positive. So we'll see how long they last, but it's a really good start for the Bruins.
Yeah, I think when we looked at that lineup in the preseason, we identified those three guys, Pastrnak, McAvoy, and Swayman, and thought kind of the same thing, like it could be worse. Like, not every team has three horses like that. But on the flip side, we also said that, an injury to one of those guys long-term could turn this team into a total lottery team. So we'll see how it goes. It looks like they're punching above their weight a little bit right now, but we'll see how the Atlantic shakes out because, as you mentioned off the top, this whole division is pretty close to 500, and it's not a guarantee that anyone is getting into the playoffs. So
yeah,
wouldn't be unheard of.
Not even just this division. I mean, as of this morning when we're recording this, only one team has a record below 500. And sorry, Harpers and Sabres. But like everyone in the Eastern Conference has been playing at a competitive rate. Like it sometimes feels like the sky might be falling in Toronto and Ottawa. It's felt like that. But also I'm looking at their records. They're at a 567 points percentage. Like, you want to be in a position to start the year where you're keeping yourself afloat and you're playing competitive hockey. You don't want to be in a position where you're in the basement and then by the time American Thanksgiving rolls around, it's so much more difficult for you to get out. Like, all it takes for some of these teams is to have one good week and then we're looking at them in a completely different light. Like, it's funny to see how perception changes everything, expectations change everything, and also how things could just change over the course of a week. Like, not to bring up the Sens, but like the Sens have like 4 games coming up this week with like Utah, Dallas, Boston, and Los Angeles. And leading up to these games, everyone's been like, oh, this team looks boring. And, oh, I'm not sure what to make of this team. There's something feels off. They win like 3 out of 4. Everyone's going to be like, oh my God, they figured it out. It's a little too uneasy to start the season.
And especially in a market like Ottawa, all the fans are going to point to the standings at that time and say, see, I told you so. It's like, well,
yeah.
there's
but I also get it too. Like, their team's been out of the playoffs. They want to see steps forward. The organization has said they've been priding themselves on seeing this team take step forwards. I get the frustration on a different level.
And typically November has been a very poor month for the Senators over the last number of years.
Yeah, but obviously with a different group of people running those teams and being on those teams as well. Like, Travis Green got asked that question last week about, like, how do you ensure this team doesn't do the same thing that they've done in November the last few years? And even last year, I think similar questions were posed to him. And you're thinking of Steve Staios as the new GM in town too. Like, they don't have any attachment to those prior terrible months of November. The players might, but it's on the guys who don't have any attachment to that to change the mentality so that way they don't have a crappy November. It's on the players have to dictate that. But like, I think the way expectations are set and just the temperature around the team, like, that's on some of the guys who have no attachment to that to also affect that a little bit as well. We'll see how it shakes up. They could, again, if they have a good week this week, if they go through their really long road trip throughout parts of the West Coast, and then I think they're in Dallas too, and a few other spots before they ended in Montreal. Like, November's still going to be a really big month, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't have to be doom and gloom.
BetterHelp is the paid partner of this video. The new year is a blank space for you to write a new story. BetterHelp makes it more convenient to get you started. BetterHelp is fully online, making therapy more comfortable and convenient. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. Your next chapter starts today. Get 10% off your first month of BetterHelp online therapy at betterhelp.com/boysinthebooth in paid partnership with BetterHelp.
For sure. Well, we will get into more Sens later on because obviously you've got the information that we need and our listeners need. So we'll be checking in on the Sens later on in this episode.
Sorry for jumping around.
No, that's okay. That's why
okay,
you're here.
man.
You're here, obviously,
right.
to talk Sens. So that's what we want to hear. But the next Core 4 story I wanted to get to was Jordan Kyrou. As you know, he was scratched for a game last week. He hasn't had the greatest start to the season. But that being said, I mean, it's not terrible. He has 9 points, 5 goals in 15 games to start the year. It seems like Kyrou is kind of maybe a bit of a polarizing player in that market and has been scratched now by multiple head coaches. So what do you make of Jordan Kyrou being scratched in St. Louis?
It's a bit of a surprise. I don't follow the Blues as closely, but to see a team that was a playoff team last year, they just get in, they had that great tear to end the year, and then for a guy like Jordan Kyrou, who was mired in trade rumors this offseason, for him to be in this spot, yeah, it's obviously a pretty big surprise. And seeing reaction from fans, like, it seems like whenever something goes wrong with the St. Louis Blues, Jordan Kyrou, for whatever reason, like, he gets, I don't want to say like the whipping boy, but like he's kind of put in a doghouse in some respect. Like, he's someone who gets kind of like, he's like a lightning rod for a certain amount of criticism. And this is a very talented player who's shown that he can get close to the 40 goal plateau in this league. Like, I mean, there's a lot of time for a lot of these teams to figure it out. But yeah, that was a pretty big surprise to see that he got scratched. And then he watches his team win without him being in the lineup. I mean, obviously the St. Louis Blues know how talented of a player he is. This is not a situation where they're just going to bench him forever. Like, this, I think it was just a situation where they needed a shock to the system. It clearly worked for what they were trying to do. Jordan Kyrou clearly is still a big part of this team. He also has that no movement clause kicking in anyway. So I think it was a pretty surprising moment to see from this past week.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting because you look around the league and you don't see many other, almost 40 goal scorers, guys who are just shy of a point per game, getting scratched on their respective teams. And it seems like this is a recurring event for Jordan Kyrou, and I don't really know why.
I don't know. I mean, it's not something that happens all the time. But still, like, just the fact that he has to be the sacrificial lamb in this particular instance. Yeah, that's obviously newsworthy. Not to mention, too, even before we got started recording, they sent down Logan Mailloux, who they got in that trade with the Canadiens this offseason as well. Clearly, St. Louis is trying to get things going with some of their marquee players.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, despite their struggles, those Blues jerseys that they unveiled this season are fantastic.
Yeah, they're clean, right? Yeah, they're clean.
Absolutely.
They got clean jerseys for sure. I gotta say, even if they don't make the playoffs this year, we can still look at them and be like, hey, they're one of the best dressed in the National Hockey League. That's for sure.
That's right. All right, our final item here for Core 4 Stories, Julian, some things are bigger than hockey, and that is definitely the case for Buffalo Sabres captain Rasmus Dahlin, who has taken a leave of absence away from the team to tend to his wife, Carolina, back in Sweden. She just had a heart transplant after, an incident back in the summer. Dahlin has still been very good for the Sabres to start the season, but watching as a Sabres fan, he still hasn't been himself. So again, some things are bigger than hockey. Just a thought on Rasmus Dahlin and his situation, taking a leave of absence away from the Sabres.
Yeah, typically I mean, you could say it's about anybody. You never really know what anyone's going through. But I think in this instance, the fact that the hockey world learned about what happened with Rasmus Dahlin's fiance a couple of weeks ago, yeah, it was a shock to all of us, obviously, and obviously we all wish nothing but the best for Rasmus and his wife and his fiance and the rest of his family. So if he needs to take that time to go be with his fiance and make sure she's okay, by all means, you know, like I again, whether the Sabres were in a good spot or not a good spot, just the fact that he's able to be afforded that time, I don't think anyone's going to get mad about that. Obviously, we wish her nothing but the best.
Well said.
Well said. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, why don't we get into the main meat and potatoes of this episode with you, Julian McKenzie, and we really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. You know, you've covered a couple of Canadian teams in two different markets now, two very passionate markets: the Calgary Flames in Calgary, the Ottawa Senators in the nation's capital. Is there a difference, and how do you differentiate the two experiences so far? Obviously, two very passionate Canadian hockey markets.
It's interesting. I mean, if you loop in the work I did in Montreal, that's 3, but I think Ottawa and Calgary are obviously much more similar in the sense that the outside perception is that they're little brothers to neighboring franchises, either in their respective provinces or in the province next to them. Trying to think in terms of specific differences. That's a good question, actually. I think there's a lot of similarities in the fact that they just want that. I mean, everyone wants their team to be good, but I think both fan bases relish that opportunity of throwing rocks at the Oilers or the Leafs or the Canadians or the Canucks and being like, hey, we got you this time. But I think what's been unique is to see a Sens fan base that spent years mired in a rebuild, and they have players that I think you consider, if they're not game breakers, they're on the verge of being game breakers. They've sort of built this team in this maybe not traditional way, but like rebuilding is sort of seen as a way to, you know, construct your teams and have them try to reach the top, no matter how long it takes. And to see fans wrestle with those expectations now and be on the edge has been fascinating to watch. Whereas you have Flames fans who are used to, I won't even say used to, they are fed up in sense that being in the mushy middle and seeing all these other teams rebuild, whether by choice or not, they bottom out in some ways, they get elite talent and they find ways to build around them. Whereas with this Flames team, where they've drafted well in previous years and they've been able to get these good players, but there has been some kind of culture of them just trying to make it to the playoffs and see what could happen. I don't know. Like I also think just in terms of the unique stories that both franchises have endured, it's obviously different. Like Ottawa, they're used to having an owner who's outspoken and making themselves part of the stories, whether it's Eugene Melnyk and maybe a little less so with Michael Andlauer, but also he's also said some pretty interesting things in his tenure.
Yep.
Whereas like Murray Edwards in Calgary, he's kind of like Bigfoot in a sense, where it's like if you see him around the rink, it's like, oh man, he's here. Like I think I saw him like twice in person over the 2 years I was in Calgary. Michael Andlauer, like it's been a couple weeks since I've seen him, but like there would be times you'll be at practice and he'll like hang around and talk to media members at the Canadian Tire Center. Like he's been more of a presence around that team, so to speak. And I can't speak for what Eugene Melnyk was like, but I get the sense that it was like that too. I would say just there's a lot of differences. There's some similarities, but they've both been really fun to cover. I feel like I've been able to challenge myself these last, I guess 4 years, 3-4 years, where I've just been able to go outside of what I knew for so long, covering and talking about the Montreal Canadiens and getting to experience all these different players and different talents and different NHL experiences that I don't know how many other people have gotten to do as beat reporters. Yes, obviously you have national insiders and national reporters who go around to different teams and they get a piece of whichever team they have to cover on a given day or talk about on a given day. But I'm pretty grateful for the fact that I've had this opportunity to be in Calgary and now in Ottawa to see what these teams are like.
I have
Excellent.
a follow-up to that, and that was great. What facilitated the move from Montreal to Calgary and then Calgary to Ottawa? Like, was it strictly just opportunity? Did you want to challenge yourself by covering a different team? Like, what kind of facilitated that for you?
Opportunity, for sure. The Montreal Calgary one was, I basically wrestled over an entire summer about whether or not it was the right move. Being in Montreal, for context, I joined The Athletic in 2021 as a editor. I was a translator at first, and I got hired full-time as an editor. And during the 2021 playoff run, I got opportunities to write. And then the season after, I was able to write more articles on the team too. And at the time, we had Arpin Basu and Marc-Antoine Godin. And I could have stayed and I could have continued editing and writing stories about the team. But if I wanted to be a beat writer, like formally, and kind of rise up the ladder at The Athletic, going to Calgary, which looked like it was going to be an opening at the time I was thinking about it. Yeah, it was something I had to consider. It was something I considered for a really long time. And as someone who was born and raised in Montreal and most of my friends and family are still there, it was a really tough decision. And then I made the jump, and it was better than I could have ever expected, just off the fact that a friend group that I built over there, they were really supportive. All the colleagues in media I had, they're supportive. I even have cousins and an aunt who live out in Calgary. So that was just a perfect situation. And then the Ottawa opportunity comes, where it was just another opportunity to cover another team in a different situation. Also getting to be closer to home. And even in Ottawa now, like, yes, I get to be closer to home, but I've been able to build up so many great friends here too, and get along with a lot of people in media in Ottawa as well. Like, it's been a really fun experience, just kind of going back and forth between the eastern part of the country and the western part of the country. I'm really grateful for what I was able to do in Calgary, and I'm really happy about how things are going in Ottawa, and not just off of my coverage of the Sens, but just for a lot of more broader national stories I've been able to do too. I've been really happy about those opportunities that kind of started when I was still in Calgary, but I'm happy that I've been able to continue that at this present stage of my career. Yeah, I would say opportunity is kind of the overwhelming answer to that question, but depending on which city, there's like little smaller facets. Like being closer to family in this instance mattered a lot in this case for certain reasons, but also just a new opportunity, a new challenge that also matters too.
Right.
We interrupt this podcast to tell you about one of our favorite partners, Sign Up Expert. If you're a sports bettor, whether brand new, casual, or hardcore, listen very carefully because this ad is for you. Guys, line shopping for the best odds matters, and that's why any profitable sports bettor needs to be using multiple sports books to maximize their profits. Thankfully, there has never been a better time to get signed up, and we are here to connect you with the best promotions industry-wide. When you use our link at signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth, you can get access to all of the top sportsbooks in your region, along with a review of each platform and its unique benefits. Most importantly, all of these sportsbooks have valuable sign-up offers for new users. And when you register through our link, you will automatically receive the top offer at each one, allowing you to start line shopping with an enhanced bankroll. Guys, it's simple. When you use multiple sportsbooks, you ensure that you can always access the best available odds, which is key to successful and profitable sports betting. So, if you want to take advantage of these incredible benefits and support our brand at the same time, please consider signing up for your next sportsbook through our link in the description below, signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth. If you're planning on signing up for a new sportsbook anyways, you might as well use our link and support the boys. So, one more time, that's signupexpert.com/boysinthebooth.
Very good. You know, Julian, obviously, besides Chris Johnston, who do you look up to, and who has kind of helped shepherd you along? Who would you go to for feedback and that sort of thing, kind of in a mentorship sort of role?
I would say now, I mean, besides CJ, I look at a guy like Arpin Basu a lot. He took a chance on me when I got hired at The Athletic, and I know there are other people involved too, but he was someone who really pushed for me to join, and I will always be eternally grateful to him, because sometimes I need him in my ear just to say the right thing, or just to say the thing I need to hear about my writing, about certain career decisions, like Calgary. Like, he was very much a big fan of me going out west, even if I was like, I'm not sure. One of my favorite Arpin Basu stories is the day I moved to Calgary. I'm at the airport and my parents are there with me. I have all my bags, and it just so happens the Canadians were going to Buffalo. I'm trying to remember for what exactly, but I forget exactly what was going on. But it was in like mid-September, and maybe it was a prospects tournament. And Arpin just so happens to be in the airport that day. I'm literally about to change my life, and he just so happens to be in the airport that day. And like, as he's like running to his gate, he like sees me, and we just hugged. We were just like, "Hey man, like, best of luck, man. Like, hope you're okay, man." Like, he meets my family, and he's like, "Hey man, like, I had to convince him to do this." But like, it was so cool just to kind of see someone I really respect and admire in Arpin just kind of give me that push before, you know, embarking on such a journey. That really meant a lot. So he's someone I obviously look up to a lot for guidance, even to this day, for a lot of my writing and a lot of different ideas. Ian Mendez, actually, funny enough, was someone I looked up to a lot. We hosted the Athletic Hockey Show together. He's someone I watched a lot of his work when he was on Sportsnet growing up, and he spent time at TSN too. And him being at the Athletic, it was cool that we were teammates, because he's someone I've watched for a long time and respected. And now that he works for the Sens and I cover the Sens, it's kind of funny that like we're in the same market for these reasons. And it's cool to just talk to him when we're not doing the whole reporter PR thing, and just be like, "Hey, let's just be like friends, like what we are before," you know? Like, that hasn't really changed in terms of our relationship, I would say. So I'm really appreciative of that. In terms of like other people, like I've bounced around from a lot of different jobs before I joined the Athletic. So I would say like a lot of people who I worked with when I was working with CTV Montreal obviously helped, or the Canadian Press. The first editor-in-chief I wrote for was a man named Egbert Gay, who was the editor-in-chief of the Montreal Community Contact, which was a local community paper that served the Black community in Montreal. That's definitely someone I have to mention for that too. Yeah, I think I've been really lucky to this point in my career where I had a lot of people open doors for me. I did a lot of work to get to where I'm at, but I don't think I'd be able to be. I don't think I'd have the platform I'd have without other people noticing me and being willing to give me a chance. So there's a lot of people I've had to lean on. People I didn't even mention immediately off this answer. Not that they're not important. It's just trying to think of them.
Too many to mention.
Yeah, and obviously this answer has not been brief, but I've been really grateful for the help I've gotten.
Yeah, well, it takes a village. We all know that, and I think the fact that you ran into Arpin at the airport, once you're embarking on this new journey, it feels like it was meant to happen. So
yeah,
like that's awesome to hear. That's a cool story. And I just wanted to ask a bit of a follow up about, going back to your experience working in both markets, in Ottawa and in Calgary.
Yeah,
you have worked and covered the little brother in both rivalries, as you said. So I wanted to ask you, which rivalry is the most fierce, between the Battle of Ontario or the Battle of Alberta, and how are they different in your opinion?
Like, I mean, I covered the Battle of Ontario in a playoff series, and like, to see the fans get at each other, every game mattering the way that it did, it was such a cool, fun experience. And there's obviously the history between those two franchises, particularly in the early 2000s. And those are some games I watched growing up too. Like, it felt so cool to say that, like through my media coverage, I could say, like, I was able to write parts of the history of that matchup. You know,
Right.
like it was super cool. Whereas the Battle of Alberta, I mean, no, like, look, on the Ontario matchup, obviously Brady Tkachuk, Austin Matthews. There's some star players, John Tavares, obviously, Jake Sanderson. There's star players in the current iteration of the Battle of Ontario matchup. Battle of Alberta was so fascinating because you had an entire city like Calgary just be like, man, we really don't want to see this Connor McDavid guy do well. But I was really surprised, and there's some similarities in Ottawa too, at how much Oilers fans just invade the entire province of Alberta. Like, when you go to Rogers Place and you're watching those games, like, you can't hear anything. You cannot hear anything. In terms of atmosphere in the league, I would call it top 5 in the league in terms of, it maybe I have to do a proper list, but Edmonton's right up there for games that matter, and especially for a game for a game like Battle of Alberta, where they know they have to dunk on their neighbor to the south. Those fans show up. Those fans play. But also, just like in every other rivalry match, like, you can't expect the best team to win all the time. You know, there are opportunities where the Flames are able to get their pound of flesh. But it was so cool to see that rivalry on display as well. Like, I got to cover a Heritage Classic game with those two guys outdoors. Like,
That's cool.
that was awesome. That was super sick to see the history on display and some of that hatred and animosity play out on the ice too. Like, I thought that was such a cool experience. I can't pick between both of them at this point, but I would say that the biggest difference is just in the styles of play and obviously the characters that are on the ice. Like, obviously Western Conference teams kind of have this different style, maybe a little bit more north-south at times compared to what you might see in the East with certain teams. And then just getting to see a guy like Connor McDavid and even Leon Draisaitl play in those rivalry games, like, that's must-watch television as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Oh, when their big guys show up for big games in big moments. Yeah, that would be nice to see.
Yeah, it just I get where you're going with that, but it was just so cool to see those guys, but also to see the Flames try to match up with their own guys too, and guys like Kadri and Huberdeau.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, guys, don't worry about the background noise going on at Harp's Place right now. We're going to edit that out in post. It's all good. But yeah, it's all good.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah, I think Harp texted them, but we can edit that out. It's all good.
Yes, my apologies. I've instructed them to quiet it down.
Hooligans, the hooligans. Yeah,
I'm just wondering, Julian. Going back a little bit to your journey so far, leaning on other people to get where you are today. What advice would you have for guys like us looking to continue to grow this podcast and to get into the industry? I mean, Chad works in the law industry. For me, I'm a media guy myself, working in our local news department here in Brockville, calling Junior A games, doing podcasts, that sort of thing. What advice would you have for guys like us continuing that journey?
Enjoy as much of this part of the journey as you can. Because once you find a way in, that's when stuff gets serious. And more people look at your work, more people have opinions on your work, and not just people on Reddit, but like your bosses, your colleagues. And that gets fun too. But depending on when you get in and depending on what your own personal situation might be, you can't just be like, oh, this is just great. Like, you have responsibilities, you have things to look after and take care of. Whereas if you're just getting in and you're just trying to find a way into a full-time media gig and you're using a podcast as a way in and you're just building it, everything you get from a show like this, like, that's gravy. Like, that's cool to kind of build yourself up. And then when you realize how far you've gotten, you can look back and be like, oh man, like it was just two guys like on Zoom or on Riverside just wanted to do a podcast and we found a way to make this work. So I would just say like the opportunities of like where you're developing yourself and you're building yourself up, like obviously take it seriously and work as hard as you can, but take a moment to kind of recognize that like there is some fun in the grind. There is fun in coming up with people who want the same things just like you and want success. And it's not always a guarantee that obviously everyone makes it, but not also a guarantee that everyone ends up in the same job. So it's always just cool to, you know, recognize that everyone's path is different. And if you work hard and the right people notice your work, like there's an opportunity for you to come. So yeah, I didn't want to say the boring answer of like, it's important to network or, you know, take on every job or make sure you get paid. Like obviously make sure you get paid, you know, don't just do stuff for free. But I know when I was coming up and I was doing all these internships and stuff, I would drive myself crazy just wanting to be there and just wanting to put in work. And sometimes, I mean, not just sometimes, I know I missed a lot coming up, like friends parties, hangouts and stuff like that. And I would stress myself out a lot. And I wish looking back at my career coming up before I joined the Athletic, I wish I let myself have a bit more fun. I think I had enough fun on different things, but I wish I didn't stress out so much about so many different things because it ended up working out in the end.
Right.
Well said.
Okay, a couple more inside baseball questions, and then we'll get to talking about the Sens, which is one of the main reasons we wanted to speak to you today. But what I wanted to ask is, what's it like working with CJ? Is it like, are you the first one to hear about some of the biggest scoops? Like, for example, if something breaks while you're recording the podcast, like, what is it like to be so close to, as I said off the top, one of the best insiders in hockey?
It's one of the coolest experiences you could have. Because I could say Chris Johnson's my friend, which I think is super cool. Whatever podcast I've ever done in my life, like whoever I'm doing a show with, like I don't believe in just doing a show with somebody and you kind of speak to them through a screen and then that's it. Like I want some kind of relationship. And the fact that I can look at CJ and say like, hey, like if I need anything, if I want help on a story, like I can go to him. That means a lot. And the fact that he's willing to reciprocate with that has also been really helpful. But yeah, like whether on the show when we're talking and then his phone goes off and then he looks very distracted because clearly an agent or a GM has texted him something. I love those moments. I relish those moments, especially when they happen on the pod, because something might happen. Like I don't know how other people would react in that moment. They might be like, oh, I don't know, like, do I just like pause the recording? Like, what do we do? But like sometimes it'll happen where like someone has info on something or a tweet comes through and you're like, oh wow, this got announced. Like you roll with that because I just imagine whoever's listening to the podcast, even if the news might be out already or they want to know more about something, like if you're following it, like you get excited. You're like, oh my God, like did something happen? Like what's going on? Like it's just a way to try to drum up suspense in a certain way.
Right.
But like, it's super fun to have that happen. And obviously being in the know about certain things, right? Like I think that's why I love doing the show because it's not just us talking about random things. Like when we have intel and we're able to go behind the curtain and provide more context on the news of the day, that's what people want. That's what people sink their teeth into. So it's cool that we're able to do the show, and it means a lot that people have enjoyed the show as much as they have.
Right. Is there any one moment or story in particular that you can remember being privy to that information before the public? Like one big one, like maybe it's, the Rantanen traders. Like I have no idea.
Oh,
right?
Man. A piece of info that we knew. Oh my God. I'm sure there's been a bunch, but like, I don't know. Like typically what will happen is that we'll do a rundown on whatever topics we want to talk about, and I'll be like, yeah, like these things work, like is this something like we should do? And then CJ sometimes will be like, yeah, like this thing's gonna happen, I know it's not out yet, but I'm gonna use the pod to talk about this. And then it's like, all right, like that's our lead for today. Like you got to go in on why David Camp's contract's gonna get terminated or whatever. Like I feel bad I don't have specific examples
That's okay.
for that question.
Yeah.
But it's definitely happened before where like CJ will get something and then we're like, okay, we're gonna go in on that because that's something that people are gonna be very interested in hearing about and are gonna want to hear us talk about. So and depending on the situation too, if it's a very serious story, I try to go to CJ and be like, all right, like what do I need to ask you? Like what's the right way to get the right stuff out of this topic? And sometimes I don't have to, so I just know in my head what I want to ask. And sometimes CJ too will also just go in that direction because it's such a meaty topic, depending on what it is. But like, yeah, we've definitely had those moments. It's really cool when that happens, obviously.
I'm picturing the interaction as CJ says something that is news to you, and you're going, oh, okay, interesting. We'll go from there. And his source is, trust me, bro, I'm CJ. You know, like, he knows everything.
We have a saying in our group chat, trust your insider. Sometimes like CJ will talk about things in our group chat and then either someone else will bring it up like 2-3 weeks later, or it'll just come to fruition. And then either CJ or one of us in the group chat will just be like, trust your insider. Like that's our motto for the show, because CJ's tapped in, and I mean he's accumulated all these different sources for years, so why wouldn't he be tapped in?
Yeah.
This podcast is sponsored by SeatGeek, the absolute best ticket app out there. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, making it quick and easy to get the best deals to tickets at your favorite sporting event. SeatGeek does this awesome thing where they score each ticket out of 10 based on its value, so you know whether you're getting a good or a bad deal. Last time I got tickets to see the Devils play, I first saw red tickets. I waited it out, monitored the price in-app, and once I saw green, I pulled the trigger. SeatGeek makes it that easy. And here's the best part. SeatGeek has completely hooked us up. Boys in the Booth listeners get $20 off their first purchase on SeatGeek with the promo code BOYSINTHEBOOTH in all caps. Click the link in our description to download the app, and remember to get your discounted tickets using the code BOYSINTHEBOOTH in all caps. Get great seats for a fraction of the cost with SeatGeek.
Absolutely. Well, gentlemen, shall we get into some Sens talk here?
I got one more.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, fire away.
Only because you mentioned the group chat, and I know that your podcast is under the umbrella of the Steve Dangle Podcast Network.
Yeah.
Briefly, just how did that come about, and what is it like to work with those guys? I feel like Steve kind of has this, he gives off this impression at times that he's, kind of just this funny, like aloof guy. But I know behind the scenes, he must be an absolute grinder to build this company from scratch, right? So what's it like working with those guys?
It's pretty cool. And I think your description of Steve falls in line with mine, where everyone just sees the yelling, screaming guy on YouTube, just obviously in pain about his team for like almost 20 years doing these YouTube videos. But particularly with Steve, I'm amazed at how tapped in he is to online culture and how much time he spends online, which I guess if you're a YouTuber, it makes sense to a certain degree. But it's one thing to just, know whatever memes are the big ones across whatever different subsections of TikTok or Instagram you follow. But I'm always intrigued whenever he talks about like what works for making a video that resonates or content that resonates, and also just how he's able to turn that on when it comes time for him to produce content. Like Steve Dangle, beyond what the podcast and his videos make you think, he's actually a smart person. So I've always been in awe of how he's been able to kind of turn himself into an empire. But also, like, I think of Adam Wilde as like, I always joke with Adam that like if he wasn't doing this SDPN stuff, he should just be my agent, because he brings his experience from working in media and working in radio to the business and knowing what sells and knows how long a podcast should be, things that should be said, and I've always appreciated his feedback. And then you have Jesse, who he's like just the stuff he's done on the production side, like he's like the engine. Like Adam, like I don't know where to put everybody on the vessel that is SDPN, but they're not doing a damn thing without Jesse Blake, like behind the scenes and making everyone look good and just being a voice of reason for that entire group. So yeah, working with those three guys and seeing also how they've developed. Like we're at a point now where Jesse Blake is going to Leafs games and is reporting.
It's crazy.
And wearing like an SDPN like press pass. Like that's super cool that we've been able to reach that point. And for the CJ show to be a part of the SDPN, like that's super cool. Like we're essentially all friends, like working together with one common goal just to be successful, and to just be a part of it has been really, really fun. How I got into it, like that's a whole other story in itself. But like, yeah, like it was, I don't know if we have time for me to go in the whole story and how I got into it. Like it was nuts. Like I just had like a TV demo that was like posted up on my Twitter for the longest while, and Adam saw it. I think he had heard about me through like Andrew Berkshire. I want to say maybe Arpin also might have mentioned me too. I don't know, but they saw that, and Adam introduced the project as like, oh, I want you to host this like secret project. And I'm like, I don't know what this is, but like obviously you guys are popular. Like I'm obviously very interested. And I remember like one night I was hanging out with Salim Valji the night, like one of the last nights we had before he moved from Montreal to Calgary to cover the Flames. And I got a phone call from Adam, and he's like, yeah, so the thing we want you to do, we want you to host Chris Johnston's podcast. And I was like, oh yeah, like I know who that is. And like that sounds pretty cool. And like in November, in 2020, I guess, we did a demo, and we thought we were going to start up in January, because obviously at that point, 2020, 2021, we were still in the pandemic, and the season was supposed to start, and then it got pushed back. And well, we didn't start in January because of constraints at CJ's former employer, which, I mean, hey, it is what it is. It just, there was a delay. And then just CJ and I just kept in touch throughout that entire time. And then we met for the first time later that August in 2021. And then one day, Adam Wild texted me like a eyeballs emoji. So I was just like, okay, I guess this podcast is actually happening now. Because CJ at that point, I think, was also trying to figure out like what direction he was going in, because he was leaving Sportsnet. And ultimately at that point, he had joined the Toronto Star. And I forget the name of the Torstar betting platform he joined at the time, but he had that too. But yeah, like Adam texted me the eyeballs emoji, and I was like, all right, I guess CJ figured out what he's got going on. And then I remember having to go to my bosses at The Athletic being like, so yeah, I want to do this podcast with CJ. I need like formal permission. And they're like, yeah, like this sounds like this is something that should work. Like that's totally fine. And then like a couple days later, I went to Adam and I was like, yeah, like I could do this podcast. Like I'm really excited. Like let's do it. And then Adam's like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean you needed permission from them? I already cleared that. You're good. They're like, what do you mean? Like, I was like stressing about this for like 3 days.
Wow.
He apparently like went to like my boss's boss and like said like, yeah, we're doing this. Cause we had a deal at the time where we were able to have basically our show listened through the Athletic app in the early days of our show. Mm-hmm. So like, yeah, like that all worked out. And we've done almost 400 episodes since.
That's incredible. I just think it's so awesome how that all came together. And also like just going back to the whole SDPN, you know, this company that's grown from Steve yelling and screaming into a camera, you know, for 20 years into, you know, some of the best hockey podcasts out there. Like your show with CJ obviously is one of the ones that are the most relied on for up-to-date information. Obviously, you have the original Steve Dangle podcast. They talk mostly Leaf stuff, but they cover the rest of the league too. And then also Agent Provocateur with Adam Walsh, which is just, you know, so I just find it fascinating. And I'm just so impressed, you know, seeing the growth of the company. And obviously you're a big part of that with your show.
Yeah.
Thank you. That means a lot.
No, really cool and all terrific people that you get to work with, Julian, and you know that in this industry. So that's fantastic, and congratulations on all the work that you guys have done so far.
Thank you. That means a lot, especially coming from you guys. And we appreciate everyone who's been able to watch all of our shows and enjoy our content. It means a lot.
Oh, it's our pleasure. All right, Sens talk. What do we think?
Let's do it. I'm
Okay.
done.
Do it.
I'm
Excellent.
ready.
All right. And again, Julian, we really appreciate you taking the time with us today. Want to ask you about the Arthur Kaliev situation.
Yeah.
This, boy, oh boy, this is a complex situation to unpack. It feels like you obviously wrote about it at The Athletic and did a great job on it, by the way. But what do you make of this situation with a young player in Arthur Kaliev?
I don't know what to make of it. I mean, obviously the allegations that are out there, it's tough to see for sure. The team obviously is deferring to the NHL with that, and when I checked in with the NHL, they didn't have any comment to offer. The best thing we could just say is just whatever process that needs to be taken in with that situation has to just kind of sort itself out with that. Whether or not there's actually something that they deem to be in violation of rules, like that's obviously something that has to be taken into account. But yeah, obviously it's a very weird story to come across for sure. I don't have like a very eloquent take to say on it beyond just like this is just a really bizarre story about a player who we all kind of thought that like, all right, they're getting a second chance in an organization with guys at the top who are very familiar with them in Steve Staios and Michael Andlauer. But yeah, this is a process that just has to see itself out.
Yeah, obviously shocking news when it comes out in September. His former girlfriend posting a series of TikToks about it. I think it was a 36-part story.
There's a ton of TikToks.
Like
yeah.
a ton of allegations, and you just don't know what to believe in a situation like this. And obviously, it's a developing story. We have to wait to see, what the NHL does with this, what they decide, the results of their investigation. But it is really just bizarre. Like I feel like you don't. I mean, I think it just goes to show that gambling being ever so present in our game now over the past maybe 5 years, like this is a development that you wouldn't see maybe 15 years ago. I think this is a new thing, kind of uncharted waters, and we'll see what the NHL decides.
Yeah, we have to see what that. I hesitate to say that this is just something that comes as a result of the boom of gambling, depending on what's been alleged out there. Like, that could just kind of stand alone as its own thing, so to speak. I don't know if this is necessarily just a result of that more than just its own isolated situation.
That's maybe a good way to speak about it. I just think over the last 5 years or so, there is seemingly a ton of instances where gambling is related to some type of scandal in sports. And this is another one of those. And, it's all sort of ironic as they wear, Bet99 or Betway on their helmets or whatever. So I always find that a bit interesting, that kind of dichotomy there.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where things end up here with Kaliev. This is a guy, obviously, who Andlauer and Staios are familiar with from their time with Hamilton in the Ontario Hockey League. So
exactly.
Will be interesting to see where things end up there for sure.
Yeah,
Chad?
That's right. Okay, I wanted to ask about Linus Ullmark. Obviously, you wrote about Linus a couple days ago in The Athletic, kind of detailing some of his struggles to start the season. I just kind of wanted to get your input. Like, what is the vibe around Linus Ullmark? He's had a tough start. He has an 8.66 through 13 games played. He has a 324 goals against average, 6-4-3 record, but according to Money Puck, in those 13 games, has a negative 7.8 goals saved above expected, which is worst in the league. Now, depending on what model you use for the expected goals, it might be a bit different, but nonetheless, towards the bottom in most of them, if not all. So what's going on with Linus Ullmark? And a follow-up question to that is his attitude and approach towards all of this situation and this slow start. Is it a bit worrying for you?
To the first part of your question, the biggest takeaway for me when we all got to talk to Linus last week was how much of an emphasis he put on the mental side of things and how he feels it's more about what's been going on mentally versus the work he's been putting in physically. That to me, just for a goaltender, especially playing in one of the most important positions in all of sports, like you need him in that right frame of mind. And if it's just for him to kind of set himself right there, like that's where I have questions about, what's he doing to get himself right so he could turn the corner. As I wrote in the article, there's history is on his side with him turning the corner in season. But obviously, to start off the year, the fact that the Sens have done a lot of work in terms of limiting chances that are brought against them, and just being able to play defense as well as they can, particularly at 5-on-5, but you're still among the league's worst in terms of goals against, like that falls on your goaltender, right? And Linus knows he needs to be better. I think everyone around him knows that he needs to be better. And I think even the game he played on Saturday against the Flyers, where it's a team he's beaten before already this season, the fact that he played well against them again, like even the second goal he allowed was weird, where he kind of did the weird like barrel roll.
Mm-hmm.
But like other than that, I thought he still played well enough to keep his team in it. He wasn't going to lose his team the game. The thing for Linus though is at some point, and it's got to be sooner than later, that has to change. Because this team is doing everything that it can to keep itself afloat without Brady Tkachuk. And once you get him back, you're hoping that 567 pace you're on turns into like 630 or 640. And you need number 35, who you're shelling out a little over $8 million per season for the next 4 years on, to be at the top of his game. But for me, I keep thinking about the fact that he's thinking a lot about what he's doing mentally to keep himself in games and to keep himself at a top level. That has to get fixed and rectified before anything. Or I don't even know if fixed is the right word, but the fact that he's paying so much attention to that's interesting to me.
Same. And the comments at the start of the season talking about his training camp, as you probably saw shared on the screen, called his camp terrible. And it's just, from a goaltender to speak like that.
He had a terrible showing on like one of the first few days of camp. Like, that's just like, like day 2, day 3, you hear that, you're like, oh, that's very honest. Yeah. And like, it's kind of funny because like as a media person, I want to hear, like, I'm okay with hearing that because like, okay, you're honest, you're being straight up and telling us, stuff that we're going to run with and be like, like the Ottawa Senators number one goaltender thinks he had a terrible showing in camp. If I'm Steve Stamkos, if I'm Justin Peters, I'm like, I don't know if I want my number one goaltender feeling this way in training camp and saying that he had a terrible showing. Like, you might be a little too harsh on yourself. Yeah. But also, just there's so much writing on that position considering what they endured before they got Linus Ullmark. I can understand why it's a bit of a sensitive topic around these parts. Absolutely.
Yeah, it just really gives, being a Leaf fan, it really gives Jack Campbell vibes, like just a guy who was his own worst critic, really hard on himself. And I just don't know, in a pressure cooker like Ottawa or Toronto, I just don't know if that's conducive to success. I feel like some markets you might be able to do that or some players might be able to do that, but I don't know. Like those comments kind of scare me if I'm a Sens fan and you hear your starting goalie who makes over $8 million, who doesn't really have, an established solid backup behind him. I shared on the screen the money puck stats and goals saved above expected, and Levi Merilainen is right there towards the bottom of the league too in goals saved above expected. So it's just a bit worrisome for me, the approach to it. But on the flip side, that's a guy who cares, right? Like that's a guy who clearly cares. And you even saw it the other night in a different goalie, Jakub Dobeš, almost breaking down into tears during his media avail because, he had a tough game. So it's really interesting when a goalie takes on, everything that comes with a loss and really takes it personally. It worries me a bit, but also it tells you that he cares. So I'm just not really sure what to think.
For me, like, I think it's good to care, but I think those markets, Montreal especially, you cannot be. I was actually funny enough talking about it with Arpin. You cannot be too high, you cannot be too low. If you're at a point where you're just getting too overly emotional over different results in a market like that, you're going to drive yourself nuts. You have to find a middle ground where you can just kind of stay there, because if you just let your emotions flow in cities like that, I just think you're going to drive yourself nuts. And to see Jakub Dobeš in those moments where he was getting emotional, like, it's good to see that he cares. But he's also a really young goaltender. Like, that's somebody who I think with more NHL games and more NHL experience, he'll learn about what it takes to work in a market like Montreal and to be able to settle his emotions. Whereas I don't think Linus Ullmark is a guy who displays his emotions in the same way, but he definitely seems like someone who is a lot more in tune with that. I would say, so to speak, especially when you hear him talk about the mental side of certain things, which is fine. It's I think it's good that he's able to tap into that. It's just a matter of just making sure that you're set right to do what you need to do for games. So I think for Linus Ullmark, like, yeah, you never want to get too high, you never want to get too low, but at least in his case, he has the experience being in different markets. He's won a Vezina too. He's shown that he's able to turn it on when he needs to.
Yeah. And I think as a goaltender, you never want to be speaking out sort of against your teammates and saying that they need to be doing a better job. And so if the comments get to that point, then, that's when you might be fracturing a dressing room or getting yourself into trouble. We've seen it this year, right? Dustin Wolf called out his teammates. Anthony Stolarz the same. And I think there was one more I'm forgetting about, but we've seen
Ullmark too said that after the Chicago game, that his team needed to be more mature in their gameplay. And then the very next game, he walked those comments back. Like,
yeah,
I don't know what's going on. Goaltenders all of a sudden are like rising up, being like, hey, I can't score all the goals.
Yeah.
But no, I understand where you're coming from with that too. Like, you don't want to get to a point where if you make comments like that and everyone hears it, then all of a sudden the attention goes on you. If you're the goaltender and you're looking at everyone in front of you being like, hey, like, I need you guys to play better, and then you let in a stinker of like 3-4 goals the next night, that kind of flaps back on you in a negative sense, right? Like, you don't want that. You want to step up in those moments. But I also don't have a problem with a goaltender saying like, hey, like, I want my guys to be better, especially if they're able to walk it back and say like, hey, I've been playing at a top level. I've been doing the best that I can. I need some help. Right? Like, I don't have a problem with that as a media member, but also I'm not in the locker room. So of course I don't have a problem with those comments as a media guy.
Yeah. It just feels like if you're already struggling, you're just putting more attention and pressure on yourself, which, it's the most pressure packed position on the ice, I think. I mean, being a former goalie. I think
there's no think with that. It easily is, right?
Yeah.
Like, you directly impact the score line with your performance on any given night as a goalie.
Yeah, I think maybe some of these goalies need to adopt, and maybe Linus Ullmark needs to do this too, adopt the William Nylander approach of just, it's just 3 games, whatever, like, just hang out, like, just relax, and then go out
some
and
markets,
get 2 and
but
2.
Like you said earlier, some markets you can do that. Some markets you can't do that. You can go to Utah and be like, hey, we're on a 3-game losing streak. It is what it is. We're a team that's been trying to come up. We're playing above expectations right now. But like, fans in Utah right now they're going to handle that much differently than in Toronto, where you've had years and years of futility. And if you're just going to be like, well, it's just 3 games, guys, everyone's reaction is going to be like, no, it's been insert number of years here. Like, there's certain markets you could do that, and there's certain markets you can't do that. So there's a way to channel that message of just being like, hey, like, we have to steady the ship and just kind of be even keel, as opposed to just being laissez-faire about it.
Totally.
No, well said, for sure. Yeah. Want to ask you about Shane Pinto, Julian.
Yeah.
I mean, he's had a tremendous start to the season. It's a contract year for him, obviously. It was reported that Ottawa had tabled a long-term extension offer to him. We still don't have a contract extension yet for what is clearly a very important player in their lineup. And I guess the question is, for the Senators, how many more guys can you afford to pay $7+ million a season, despite knowing that the salary cap continues to rise? So Where do you think things are at with Shane Pinto and the contract negotiations, and just your thoughts on what has been a terrific start to this 25-26 NHL season?
So for Shane Pinto, the fact that he got out to the start that he got out to, I clearly he sees this as a prove it year. When we chatted during preseason, I don't think he didn't turn down the notion that like this was a prove it year for him. Obviously, with big money coming up, you know, you want to show that you're a useful player on a team like the Ottawa Senators for sure. And I think he's done that. And I mean, last year we were looking at a guy who thrived in that third line role and did very well in the PK. And now Travis Green is finding him opportunities on the power play where he's turning himself into an all situations player, which could make him more valuable for a potential new contract. Like I'm far from a contract projection expert, but if I'm Shane Pinto and I look at my point totals and where I'm at next to a guy like Dylan Cousins and where he's slotted in the lineup, and I think of all the different things that I'm able to do that maybe a Dylan Cousins can't do, and I'm speaking specifically on playing defensively, I think it's more than fair to look at Dylan Cousins' contract as a comparable for what type of money I should be getting. In terms of the length, like, yeah, obviously for the Ottawa Senators, he's someone of value for you and you want him to stay long term. I also could understand if you're Shane Pinto and maybe you want something a little bit shorter just to kind of give yourself an opportunity to just wait and see. And then you give yourself opportunities. You don't necessarily give away all of your UFA years, right? Like if you sign an 8-year deal as a 24-year-old, you're taking yourself into your 30s, which if that's what you want, that's what you want. But if you want to give yourself an opportunity to see what could be out there for you as a potential UFA at the prime of your career, I can also understand that thinking too, especially with the fact that you mentioned with the salary cap going up and dollar figures going up. Do you want to just put yourself in an 8-year deal where you can make a decent amount of money now, but in about 5-6 years, you're making peanuts compared to what other guys are doing at your position, compared to just saying, hey, you know what? Maybe a 3-year deal makes sense. And then you see where the money's at that point. So I think things could always change. But at this point, I'm expecting this negotiation to just take its time, right? Like I wondered if like before the season would make sense, and it seemed as if just both sides were just ready to just kind of have this play out of however long they needed to play out. But I think for Shane Pinto, the fact that he's been off to the start that he's been on, he puts himself in a pretty good position to get himself a decent amount of money. And if he keeps himself on a short-term deal, I'm not saying he will necessarily, but if he does, I think that's good business for himself personally, considering where the money's supposed to be going over the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's a terrific point. And, you know, I think a lot of players are sort of looking at NBA contracts and it's like big money, shorter term. And we could certainly see that for Shane Pinto as well. Chad?
Yeah, just on Pinto here with the hot start. I mean, I think it, you know, in hindsight, it would have been crazy for him to sign a deal before the season started. Just, you know, now he's off to this incredible start. If he's able to put up, you know, 70 plus points, which he's on pace to do right now, all of a sudden that $7 million number becomes a lot more stomachable if you're the Sens. So
yeah, absolutely, for sure. Like, and for a market like Ottawa, where you know you have to kind of fight a little bit compared to some of the bigger markets to lure in talent. I understand you're gonna try to find every way to keep your core together and sign your guys to shorter term deals to kind of figure things out. Yeah, it makes a lot of fiscal sense to kind of look at it from that vantage point too, just to keep your costs down. But I think if you're Shane Pinto, and I can't speak for the guy, but I'm looking at my potential earnings at the prime of my career. I don't want to say his name because I don't want people to get a little, you know, riled up here, but I'm looking at what Brady Tkachuk might do too, because he's going to be a UFA in a couple years as well. I mean, I get that you have guys like Stützle and Sanderson signed into the 2030s, but I think it's more than fair to project yourself out in the future, not just for yourself, but what this team might look like too.
Totally. And I think with the salary cap environment, signing a long-term deal, I think you're just leaving money on the table. Like,
I think so too,
really
but
do.
I also understand the other side of it, where you want stability, you want financial security,
Mm-hmm.
and depending on what position you play, like, I mean, 7 million is 7 million. It's a lot of money still. It might not be 14, but 7 mil is 7 mil.
Absolutely. I'd
Yeah.
take 7 times 7 right now. How about you, Harp?
Absolutely.
I'll take 7 times 1
Exactly.
in both senses.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. Terrific.
Okay. Any other Sens questions, Harp, or should we get into the book?
One more for you, Julian, and then really looking forward to talking about your book coming out in 2026. Another forward who is still trying to find his footing in the lineup after being acquired around the trade deadline from the San Jose Sharks last season. You know where I'm going with this. It's Fabian Zetterlund of the Ottawa Senators, and he was certainly paid, pretty handsomely, over $4 million on a short-term deal from Steve Staios and company. But I think when you watch the Senators play, he's a guy in that forward group that you're still trying to gauge. What is his role? Where does he fit in this lineup? I mean, I know he's in the top 6 right now, and that may have to do with the fact that their captain is out of the lineup. But where are you at on Fabian Zetterlund and where he fits in this Senators lineup?
I think there's a version of this Senators team where if they have all the right pieces they need to be a true cup contending team, Fabian Zetterlund is a middle 6 winger. I thought at the beginning of the season he was a prime candidate to play shotgun with Tim Stützle, and I understood the logic of signing a player like Zetterlund to the money they did, thinking that he'll just be a 20-goal scorer and you want the potential to go higher up with that. Right now, to me, he looks like a guy who can pot in at best 15, but there are facets of his game that I do like, where he can play physical if he needs to be. He's thrown the body so much in his previous stops. He can be hard on pucks. He can make drives to the net, and he has some chemistry with some of the team's best offensive players, like a Stützle, like a Drake Batherson. Like, he's somebody who can play with those guys in a pinch if you need. And I think for a team like Ottawa, where I don't think they could turn down any scoring that they can get, he could still be of value. And again, once the salary cap goes up, that for like the money that Fabian Zetterlund is getting, like, obviously you want him to produce more, but that 4 million plus might not look as bad in the years to come. But obviously you want more production from Fabian Zetterlund at this point in his career. But I think a lot of the line juggling, of course, like Travis Green's trying to find something that works in light of not having Brady. I mean, he had Cousins, Stützle, Batherson for a couple of games, and we've already seen that change from the games we watched over the weekend. Like, it's very much going to be a work in progress, and to see him back on a line with Cousins and Batherson, like, I'm not surprised. They had some familiarity playing against the Leafs in the playoffs last year. Like, I think part of it is dictated by Fabian Zetterlund's performance. Obviously, 1 goal in 15 games for what you're paying for him, that's not good enough. But I also think a small percentage of that is just the general ebbs and flows of lines being jumbled around because they're trying to find something that works.
Yeah.
Totally. We know that there's definitely more that Fabian Zetterlund can provide, and we know the guy can lift too.
Yeah, I've seen the videos.
Mutant. Yeah, you would ideally like him to get back to his production pace in San Jose. Career high 44 points. He had 24 goals that year in a full season. I don't know if that's realistic to expect him to get back there, just given probably less opportunity on a deeper Ottawa Senators team compared to San Jose. But you'd like, 30 to 40 points, I think, would be ideal. And maybe 15 goals would be, the goal. I think, and it's a player who's talented enough, to be able to do that. Still relatively young, 26, and there's still some upside in that lineup. So I don't think 1 goal in 15 games is what you can expect from Zetterlund. They'll have to get him going somehow, though.
Yeah, like, you don't want it to be 2 and 30 either. Like,
yeah.
you need a stretch from Fabian Zetterlund. I mean, you need some stability. I could also understand from his standpoint, like, even when he was acquired, he was placed on a fourth line and he kind of worked his way up. Like, he could benefit from having direct chemistry with somebody to get himself going, but he also has to show that himself too.
It's clear the tools are there. He just has to kind of be put in a situation to be able to put them all together.
Exactly.
And once upon a time, a player you looked at as maybe a core piece of the San Jose Sharks moving forward. That obviously changed. Still trying to find his footing with the Ottawa Senators. Let's talk about the book, Julian. Very exciting. Coming out in 2026, your book,
Yes, sir.
Black Aces. And looking forward to the release of that. You lit right up there. I know you're excited about this. Tell us about the book, man, and what readers can expect.
It's a series of profiles on important Black hockey people and players. And I realized, and it's mentioned in the book too, that like there are certain stories that are highlighted. It doesn't mean they're better than others. It was just, these are stories I thought that would be cool to write about and talk about. And I tried my absolute best to weave in other stories too from guys not necessarily mentioned, but to get the opportunity to write about people like Willie O'Ree and Herb Carnegie and Joe McGinley, PK Subban, Sarah Nurse, Angela James. That means a lot. It was a really cool opportunity to do, and just the idea to do it. Like, I got approached about writing a book in 2023, and I thought it would be a cool book idea, and to have the cooperation I've had from all the different interview subjects I've had has meant a lot. And I mean, we're 3 months away from the book being out for everyone to buy, but it's as rewarding of a process as I've ever experienced for anything I've done. I've wanted to write a book ever since I was in elementary school, and to be able to accomplish that dream means a lot to me. So I'm going to be really excited when I get the opportunity to hold the book in my hands and buy it and see other people buy it and enjoy it and talk about the book wherever people want me to talk about the book. So yeah, I hope people enjoy Black Aces. I hope people enjoy the profiles on the people I mentioned. And, just, it's also been cool hearing other people be like, oh, like, I hope you write about this person. And even if the person's not in it, it's like the fact that you're thinking about it and the fact that you care about those stories, like, it just goes to show that, like, as much as we consider hockey to be a predominantly white sport, Black people have played such a role in the sport being what it is, not just in the context of the NHL, but in the PWHL as well, in Olympic hockey. You go so far back as the Colored Hockey League in the Maritimes, like the innovations that came from that, which we've seen spilled out into the NHL. Like, I think it was really cool to be able to mention those stories and for people to like acknowledge the project, and maybe that gets them to look up some other stories on their own time. So yeah, I consider this project like a really meaningful hallmark of my career so far.
That's awesome. That'll be such a rewarding experience to have a physical copy of the book that you wrote in your hands, and we'll definitely be picking up copies of that. And I'm glad you mentioned the Colored Hockey League in the Maritimes, because I wanted to ask you if you caught the documentary that debuted at TIFF in 2022, Black Ice.
I read the book. I didn't get to watch the actual doc, but like I have the book of which the documentary is based off of, and that gave me so much information for what I was writing. And shout out to the Fosse brothers for putting that book together. The coolest thing about this project too was like checking out other like projects, like the Grant Fear doc, Coco, for example, Ice Queens, which I believe Kwame Mason also put together too. But yeah, Black Ice is a documentary that people should watch and also read the book as well. Like, because the book for sure has all these different gems in it. And if you didn't know anything about Black people playing hockey before the NHL and why the Colored Hockey League of the Maritimes came to be, it is worth everyone's time. This is the fact that like we're still seeing it commemorated 130 years after the fact is like super cool.
100%.
And Julian, you mentioned that we're 3 months away from the book being released everywhere. Tell us the official release date and where people will be able to find the book.
February 3rd, and you can pre-order it now wherever you get your books. So if you're into Amazon, Indigo, you can do that, the big box stores. But also, if you are someone that likes to support local bookstores, if you're someone who doesn't care for Amazon or Indigo, I'm not going to hold that over you. You should do that. You should go find a local bookstore that you care about, that you rock with, that you go to for books, and pre-order the book there. Offer support to a local store, buy local if you can. And yeah, just you can pre-order now up until February 3rd. And then from then you could just buy the book. And if there are other details coming out about other formats in which this book will be out, I will let everyone know, because I've had other people ask me like, hey, is this going to be out as an ebook? Is this going to be out as an audiobook? Like, I don't have the answers right now, but as soon as I have the answers, I will provide those answers.
Excellent.
So you're potentially thinking of reading it? That would be awesome to be able to hear your voice, read the book.
I would love to do that. Yes.
Yeah. I know it's always a huge task for authors to read their own books, but I think that's how you get the most genuine, representation of what they meant or how they wanted to emphasize a certain part of a sentence, whatever. Like, for example, Steve Dangle's book, he voiced it,
exactly.
Yeah.
Also, I wrote the damn book. Like, why can't I voice it?
Exactly. We don't want to hear some random guy, we want to hear you.
That's right. That's right.
Exactly. Yeah. So as soon as I hear on stuff like that, you guys will be among the first to know.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it. Chad, anything else that you have for Julian before we wrap up here?
I think we've stolen enough of his time today. We're almost at an hour and a half. I'm sure we'll have more questions once we hang up, but maybe we'll have to do this again in the future. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. This was great.
Yes, thank you, Julian. And again, you can keep up with Julian and his work at theathletic.com/senators. Of course, the Chris Johnston Show on the Steve Dangle Podcast Network, and you can follow him on X at JKA McKenzie. That is his handle. So, Julian, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hope to do this again in the near future, my friend.
Let me know when you guys want me back on. Thanks, guys.
Excellent. Thank you.